Africa Speaks of today. My name is Steve Mulindwa, and I do hope that you had a wonderful weekend as always. Now, what have we got in today's program? Something on Nigeria, which is very, very, very interesting. Now, in less than 6 months' time, Nigerians go to the polls to elect a new president to replace Muhammad Buhari. The list of parties and presidential candidates are all in place now, waiting for the estimated 80 million voters to make up their minds on who to vote in. Now, who will emerge as the country's next president is anybody's guess. The history of the country makes it difficult to predict what might happen during these elections and beyond. It's 62 years since the country gained independence from Britain. But what went wrong to a country usually referred to as the Green Belt of Africa? It has seen military coups, a civil war that took millions of lives, and the ever-presence of Boko Haram in the north and other parts of the country. Now, where does it go from here? With me in the studio today to discuss Nigeria at 62 are the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Party, Mr. Julius Abure. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Also in the studio is Mr. Makinde, a lecturer and author based here in UK, who doesn't really need any introduction because he's been here countless times. Now, the key question that I always look at, I want this to start with the chairman. The rise of the Labour Party, and Peter Obi, for that matter, is seen here in the West as a game changer in the Nigerian politics. And what's the difference? What is the difference between him and the leaders of APC and PDP? Because the West now, Britain and America are looking at him, and from the newspapers that I've read about here, The Guardian, The Times, and so on, they'll say, hang on a minute, this is a new kid on the block. But he was a governor before. He was there. But why? What has made him rise so fast to such a level?
Like you rightly described him, he has become the game changer in the Nigerian political space. Not just himself, and the Labour Party. Because Peter Obi and the Labour Party are two sides of the same coin. And therefore, Peter Obi and Labour Party have become the game changers in the Nigerian political space. What will be different is you can get what will be different from the behavior, the antecedents, and the character of those running currently. I told Peter Obi that even though he was a member of PDP, in terms of ideology, in terms of character, in terms of behavior, he ordinarily wouldn't have been in PDP. It was a mistake for his being a PDP. And the issues have become very, very clear. Peter Obi was governor of Anambra State, like you rightly observed, because I have said here that the character, the pedigree, the antecedents, the competence and capacity of the presidential candidates for next year's election will be a major determinant in who becomes the president of Nigeria. And looking back at the performance in office as governor in Anambra State, the performance is clear. The records are clear. And I want to say that Peter Obi as governor, in terms of performance, performed very, very well. Outside performance, Peter Obi is the only governor on record that left, as at the time he was leaving office, left over 70 billion in the coffers of Anambra State. Go and find out. Governors, I think you have asked the question. I need to give you the analysis because you have asked what difference will he make? And I'm telling you and explaining to you why he's going to make a lot of difference. And Nigerians believed that he will indeed be able to make the difference. And that's why you have seen that he has become the game changer. And the only way you can assess what people will come and do in office is to look at what they have done before, is to look at their past, Look at what they are capable of doing. And then you use that to assess and judge what they are capable of doing tomorrow. And that's why I've decided that to answer your question, the best way to answer your question is to make reference to his past.
Okay. There were irregularities in Anambra, but I won't go into that. But when he was governor, I want Makinde to come in here. What the race is a major issue here in the West. They're looking at it as they say, hey, he's a new kid on the block. He's coming up. He was a governor, yes. What do you think is a major issue? Is this simply his past, or is it the youth movement, which is he has jumped in and seen where the mistakes were, and he's moving on, is using that as a major block, because the others are not using it. They are using different methods.
Well, you see, I think one thing to start off with regard to Nigeria and Africa in general, just to keep things on an even keel, is that we still have these people, serried ranks of Africans voting with their feet, risking their lives through the Sahara Desert, over the Mediterranean. And you see, ultimately, the judge is at what point Nigeria, whether in its state polities or in its the nations as a whole, what exactly has it achieved? And so, which is what is part of the trailer of your flyer. What has Nigeria achieved
over the years?
And the judge of any nation is its gross national product and its unemployment rate. And those are not good, to put it mildly. Okay. So that that's the starting point. If you're going to run a nation, well, you need something that is inclusive. And I think it's a breath of fresh air, because on my last appearance on your program, I did say that much of Nigerian politics is criminally orientated.
Criminally orientated?
Yes, I choose my words very carefully. I wouldn't go into individuals, although people do know that people who have ran in the past and probably presently have been sullied by allegations of not just corruption, but pure criminality in their past. So when we speak about Nigeria at 62, what it needs to achieve, I keep going back to the same thing I say. Whether in my writing I'm assessing historical figures like the late General Achampong of Ghana, or Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, or Sekou Toure, which is what is your country's level in terms of its industrialization, and how have the institutions evolved since then? Now, if we have to answer that negatively, then that unfortunately is the situation we have in Nigeria.
No, I was more or less looking at Obi. Because he's a game changer. He's a game changer, and
you say he's a game changer. Well, I would say one word of caution there, because I'm not here to debunk Obi or to praise him. It's not about hagiography or demonization. My worry is that we are resorting to populism. And I will explain why, going back to what Peter Obi or Abubakar, Atiku, or the other chap, the Asiwaju, what they need to do or show Nigerians they want to do with the country. Otherwise, we're in a really dead situation. But I will just say about Peter Obi tapping into this youthful zeitgeist, and also making bridges across the lines of ethnicity and religion. That's important. Not just among the godfathers who are deciding, let's run this ticket so we can get these sorts of votes going. That is interesting, but I will sign a word of caution. We have the Brazilian elections going on. Two heavyweight people. Jair Bolsonaro and Lula da Silva. But I think at the end of the day, one is right wing, one is left wing. But I think people in Brazil are even noticing, even those who see it as a welcome thing that Lula is in the race again, they are saying that beware of populism. And instead, what is wrong with Brazil is the system. And I think that was what you were getting at in our pre-show.
Yeah, it is.
Once you get to power, well, what do you do with it? If you're still within a system that might be working against you. And so that is how I would but I just need to conclude with two things. Very, very quickly. In other words, what I always keep on saying is that whether it's Atiku, Obi, or the Asiwaju, have they a plan that will make Nigeria less dependent and not just a mere appendage on the global economic structure? And secondly, what plans do they have in regard to restructuring or essentially ensuring that Nigeria's institutions move in a direction in which they are not replications, unworkable replications that have been imported from abroad, but they are indigenized and can work for the people. Those two things. We take it from there.
You've got too much in details over that. I'm looking. I've often wanted to look at the issues that surround us, which probably makes us fail to succeed in life and to succeed in what we try to do. Now, things like, for example, I'll give a quotation here from the last colonial governor. What he said at the time.
Robertson.
I have often asked this question in many times, and he says, look, Nigeria is divided along religious and ethnic lines. This is what Sir James Robertson said. Wilson Robertson. Nigeria is very much a tribal society where local and tribal alliances count more than the national interest. And he says, look, if these things are not dealt with, now I'm combining this question together with the religion, where we have the Christians and the Muslims. Now, all previous Nigerian presidents have failed to address that issue, and it is extremely vital that it's addressed and dealt with so that you have the core of unity. If you don't have that, all these Oduduwa, Republic, iPod, they're coming into all that. They're making that ground. How is Obi going to handle that? Because he handled something in Anambra, but it wasn't as big on such a big scale as this one. How does the Labour Party, not basically Obi, going to handle this issue?
Well, we have been very unfortunate in Nigeria. To have leaders who play on ethnicity and religion and tribe to sustain themselves in power. Instead of leaders to be nationalistic in nature and address the main issues of hunger, of poverty, of unemployment, issues of the economy, issues of security, and all whatnot. By the time they have failed woefully in addressing these issues, they play up ethnicity, play up tribal sentiment,
it's to their advantage.
Play up religious sentiment, and continue to use that to sustain themselves in power. And now that has been the narrative. And for us, a Labour Party, we believe that good governance, providing what the people requires, turning the economy around, lifting people from poverty, removing people from hunger and unemployment. We put the country and the people on the path of unity and togetherness, transparency of the leadership, and patriotism of the leadership. We go a long way in unifying the country. We have had leaders who were more sectional than leaders who are nationalistic. And therefore, if we begin to have leaders who are able to rise beyond ethnic and religious sentiments and put the nation first, develop the economy, provide what the people requires, and therefore it will be a starting point in unification of the country. It has been very unfortunate for Nigeria that we've never had leaders who are nationalistic in nature. And that is why we are where we are. And we are very hopeful. And we believe that we have seen these differences in Nigeria. And one of our cardinal program is the unification of the country. Because we believe that it is only when you have peace and unity that you can reposition the economy, reposition the politics, and then set the country on the path of growth and development. Unity is key.
Of course.
And achieving unity will start from the leader. If you have leadership who throws up ethnicity, who throws up tribalism, in order to sustain itself in power, obviously we continue to remain where we are. But we believe that the government of Peter Obi and Labour Party will be nationalistic in nature. We will do what the people want. We will use the resources of the country to develop the country, provide what the people requires, and then, above all, reorientate our people and let them see that Nigeria should be first. The interest of the country should be first, other than parochial and selfish interests.
Ade, it's an issue which is not going to go away. It's still going to be there in 100 years' time if it's not dealt with.
Now, I think you see, Nigeria, we have to explain the background to this. People are watching this; they're learning all the time. Whether it's age or they're not Nigerians, and so it's worthwhile just reminding us that Nigeria is a conglomerate nation. It was pieced together by colonial draftsmen, and in fact, you had a northern protectorate, largely Islamic, Christians there, and you also had the South, which was influenced mainly by Christianity, and they were sort of joined together. So there are two contesting issues there, which is still contested to this very day. Number one, Nigeria, is it a project, a British project, which was forced onto the native inhabitants? Secondly, what the counter to that is, was it something actually which was negotiated? And the elements of both that are true, that Britain needed both North and South together, even though one was more developed. I use that in a very broad sense. You know, the South with accepting Christian education, etc., was ahead of the North, and in a sense still remains that way. And one of the conditions of the North joining that federation was that they would have some political they would have actually a decisive political influence on that country. And so it's very important that when we're talking about Nigeria today, that we realize that sort of condition still exists today. As far as nationalism is concerned, I think that has been promoted in the past. There's a national anthem. There's
it's not succeeding.
They created. We know that. But let's just get it out. Let's just get it out. Because we can talk about things that may look substantive, but they will end up to be superficial. But you have a pledge. You pledge to Nigeria, your country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. That sort of thing. And people have played on Nigeria's unity. They've said that after the events of 1966. When you had a violent uprising, which was seen to be sectionally motivated, and then there was a counter coup, which was definitely tribally motivated. The idea was that let's break it up into federations and into states. Let's live up to it as a federation. And so nationalism has been a part of what military governments have proselytized, and civilians. Now, I know the results of that. You don't need to remind me.
Of course.
There's still something missing in that. Now, my point is that, well, apart from just platitudinous statements, we want to know from the budding political leaders, but it's not just about political leaders. We want to know from the intellectual leadership, if we do have an intellectual leadership. And there's evidence that we don't have a creative intellectual leadership. What do they have in them that will foster this bonding,
the kind of unity,
this unity?
That question is very, very difficult in a sense that I think it's more individualistic. It depends on an individual to do that. Now, I want to come back to Peter Obi. He withdrew from the PDP primary, and then there is a look that there could be an alliance between Labour Party and PDP in future. And just like Labour Party has had alliances with other political parties in Nigeria, and this could be something that could be bigger than most of all the other political parties put together. If these two can come together, obviously there will be a big influence. Do you see this as an issue that could also change the game as far as the election is concerned in Nigeria?
Well, I think it's better to answer it straight. I did not foresee a situation where Labour Party and PDP at this time.
Yeah. You don't see them coming together.
Will come together to agree on the 2023 general election. The issues are clear. We are trying to promote a party with a different ideology.
All right.
A party that is downtrodden.
Yeah.
A party that will be controlled by the people. Party that will be owned by the people.
Okay.
You see, part of the reasons we have had this back and front is because the two political parties, APC and PDP, were owned and controlled by money bags. And that's why you never had the right candidate emerging from their party primaries. You had imposition of candidates in those two political parties.
They use
money to buy people. They sponsor their stooge. They bring their boys and sponsor them to take political offices. Irrespective of what may be their competence. Competence, capacity were compromised. And therefore, for us in Labour Party, we want to nurture a political party that will be people-based, that will be controlled by the people, that the people will own. And therefore, there is no meaty point between the Labour Party and the PDP, because we are building a new political party that will be owned by the people, and you can see that very clearly in the movement that you have seen. The rallies organized by the people. They fund it, they run it, and arrange it. It is now that the campaigns have started that we are taking charge of the campaigns, because of course we have to provide leadership, organize our own campaign. So the people is gradually owning the Labour Party, and that is what has been missing in the other two political parties. You are aware, you are a journalist. I used to hear that people complain that there's no internal party democracy in those other political parties, because popular candidates, candidates that are capable, that have the competence, are not allowed to emerge from those two political parties. Apparently,
it's who the bosses want.
So now we are nurturing a new political party that will be owned by the people and driven by the people, and therefore at this stage we cannot afford to disappoint the Nigerian people and compromise the philosophy, the ideology of the party. We are looking for people with integrity, people with dignity, people with character, people with nationalistic outlook, who can indeed unite the party and bring all the parties together, because I believe that there is strength in our diversity. We believe that the political class have been using what divides us to continue to remain in power and in office and continue to impoverish us. And that is why we want to work for the people, provide what the people need, and remove people from poverty. You know, poverty is one tool that have been used by our political leadership over the years to continue to impoverish us. Poverty is a major tool. Education is also another tool that have been used to hold us down. And therefore, for us in Labour Party, if you are able to move the economy from consumption to productive economy, you would have lifted people out of poverty. If you provide education and remove ignorance from the land, you'll be able to empower the people to the extent that they will be able to know that the current political elite have been using our ignorance, have been using our poverty to sustain themselves in power. It's very good, and I need to make this point. That I think that as things stands today, I'm sure that the Nigerian people have realized this consciousness, and I'm sure that's why they are buying into the project of the Labour Party. Like you said, Labour Party is gradually becoming the game changer, and it's not just about populism like he alluded to. It's also about the reality that is on ground. It's not just about what has resulted in the populism that you may say is because of the character and the antecedent of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party and the Labour Party itself, because there is antecedents, there is competence, there is pedigree, and that is what the people is looking at, that has given birth to the current populism that you see. Populism don't come by accident.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't come by accident.
It doesn't. Now there is a question here which some people have addressed, and I think I got one person who actually wrote to me and said, look, the problem with an issue of the issue of the Labour Party is that we've got people who are running away, who have failed in PDP and have failed in APC and are running to Labour now because the way the big man himself left the other party to go. Then the other parties are also saying, okay, if they haven't made it, maybe if I go to the Labour Party with the less experience and less I've been in experience for a long time, maybe I'll have a seat in there. This is one of the things that is seen as well. Is there a way in which the Labour Party could start saying, hey, hang on a minute, we don't want you?
There are several. I need to just answer this.
No.
There are several candidates that came to us and wanted our tickets.
Okay.
And because they had baggages of corruption, baggages of non-performance, those candidates were rejected.
Okay.
Most of the candidates of Labour Party today are new breed political party. And that's why new breed politicians, whom we believe have distinguished themselves either in their field of endeavor, that have distinguished themselves in their previous offices. We also looked at dignity and the integrity of those candidates before we gave them our tickets. We carefully, this time around, selected candidates of the party because we believe that Peter Obi alone cannot do the magic. He will require and needs people of probity, people of integrity to join in that government in order to be able to drive the vision of moving Nigeria and removing Nigeria from the doldrums to where the country ought to be. So the tickets were not, after all, you must have heard that where people were collecting billions of naira and millions of naira from candidates. We select some candidates in my party that didn't have money to buy the funds and that we believe had the credibility and pedigree to change the narrative and what with the Labour Party. We're giving tickets to run free of charge. Go and find out, go and verify, go and confirm. You are a journalist.
Okay,
those facts are on the street, and you can confirm them. They are not hidden facts. Majority of candidates running under the platform of the Labour Party today are men of probity and credibility, not men and women with baggages. We're very conscious of that.
Mr. Chairman.
And what is even more, we also believe that if the head is upright, the body too will be upright. Over the years, we have not had political leadership that have been role models to others. All we have had are people who are corrupt in the saddle of leadership. We have people who have stolen money and use that money to sustain themselves and sustain their political empires and have impoverished us over the years. And therefore, this time around, that narrative is what we are working to change.
You're a proper politician. You
can it's a reality. The reality on the ground. It's the reality on the ground. And if what I'm saying here is not correct, I challenge you as a journalist to confirm. The reality is clear. As we speak today, my candidate among the committee of presidential candidates stands out. And that's why majority of Nigerians have bought into the project of Labour Party. I'm not sounding immodest here.
No,
but the reality on the ground as it stands today is that Labour Party is providing leadership, providing opportunity for the downtrodden, for the voiceless, for those that have been oppressed over the years, for those that have been set out of school. Imagine that tertiary institutions have been shut down for 6-7 months. And government is not sensitive about it. Under Peter Obi, can never happen. You can also find out what he did in that respect. In Anambra State. In Anambra State today, Anambra State University is not on strike because of the foundation laid by Peter Obi. Peter Obi, as governor, met with ASU and said, what is the problem? And they gave their problem and gave their analysis. Say, you know what? I will systematically provide the funds that you need to run. You see, we need to say some of these things.
I know.
So that people know that it's not about sentiment. It's not about sentiment. It's about the facts on the ground. It is only Anambra State University today that is not on strike. And that foundation was laid by Peter Obi. And he commitment to the agreement with ASU. He defrayed and provided what they needed in Anambra State University. And other governors bought into it. And that's why Anambra State University today is not on strike. And these are facts, verifiable facts. And therefore we are saying that you must look at the past and the antecedents, the character, the competence of these presidential candidates and make a decision. And I'm very sure that Nigerians have made their analysis and have come to the conclusion without sounding immodest that Peter Obi is the best presidential candidate.
I've always been told that you don't give a politician a microphone unless you're willing to. Because
let's say something serious about how Nigeria can progress.
I wanted to ask before we go any further. I wanted to ask this question because it's a very important one, because it's the entire country probably rests on it. The American format of government has failed to work in Nigeria. That is the House of Representatives, the governors and senators. Can there be another format of government that can be used? Is there something that can be done? Say, for example, the governorship, well, maybe you can keep the governor, but the House of Representatives and senators and all that, is there something which could come in differently in terms of administration? Because as this thing has been on for years, and there are the people taking money, there are the people doing this. Is there something that decentralization can be put away so that you have local governments being given more powers, because that is where the corruption comes right from the top. If the top people have the money, the people who are making decisions over the money.
Corruption comes from everywhere. I mean,
I know, but if it's
an example,
if it decentralized like what it is here, you have the local councils, you have the local what. This is where the power is.
I've said it before. Let me look. I have to drum this in. This point in because I have mentioned this issue. That there are two things that Nigerians, if the Nigerian populace, if the Nigerian electorate are not setting the bar low, they need to obviously think about. They want to elect or they want to select leaders who are going to have a vision. Now, this vision may be predicated on something that is ideological, in the sense that we all understand what right and left wing entails. But my point, it boils down to the centrality of two issues. Number one, what plan does any political leader have for developing Nigeria to the extent that it becomes an industrialized society? Because other than that, we're not facing the issue. So first of all, what plan does the politician have? And then secondly, the second broad point apart from that is this issue of how do you provide a basis of an indigenized system that would suit Nigeria? Now, in that regard, I could come up with several suggestions. There are people who have spoken about how Nigeria can be restructured. There are people who have spoken about how the system of government could be changed back more to the parliamentary system rather than the present presidential system, because the first republic started as a parliamentary system. And my point is that these sort of discussions are still nonetheless missing the point. Because let's go to basics. Those nations that have risen, those non-Western nations that have become highly industrialized and developed nations since the 19th century, other than from Western Europe, they have adopted a certain approach to developing their countries. I'm referring to the old Soviet Union, South Korea, Singapore, and more recently China. In each of those cases, the first common denominator was dictatorship, on the other hand, authoritarianism. So Nigerians need to think outside the box. We don't want to elect people who are too weak or powerless because they live in an open society that can be manipulated by outside external forces, which is where the degradation of Africa comes in, because most of the countries, the likes of Mobutu, and even those who tried their best, they have been frustrated by the external systems imposed on Africa. The Bretton Woods system, for instance, which essentially encourages indebtedness. So going back to those countries, people need to think outside the box, and that these nations, USSR, Singapore, South Korea, China, they were not formulating cosmetic changes. They were not formulating a 2-year plan or a system until the next election. They actually formulated plans that were decades long. And that the starting point was a 5-year to 7-year plan. And in that regard, what are you going to do about industrialization? Nigeria has a steelworks situated in a place called Ajaokuta since the 1970s. This thing has not worked.
Abandoned.
Now you see, that is an indictment, and I'm not going to go into the details of why it hasn't specifically worked. But my point is, if Nigeria, with all its wealth and natural resources, is not developing and harnessing those natural resources, not to talk about the human resources, because unemployment rates are skyrocketing. I mean, they say it's 33% in general, but for youths, it's like 53 point something percent, perhaps worse. Now, what we want to see is what 5 to 7 year plan do we have for looking at the issue of industrialization, mass industrialization on a level that Nigeria will be producing products, refrigerators, cars, using the resources that are available within its own geographical zone and producing it. This is very important. Just a minute.
It is,
from raw material to finished product, all within the same financial currency regime. You're not living like South Korea importing these things. That's number one, what we want to see. And also agriculture, food production. Nigeria, with all its resources of agriculture, you mentioned green belt, but it is still not producing. We want to see what efforts for mechanizing the agricultural sector. So if we can't develop according to the lines of the USSR, South Korea, Singapore, etc. But what we can do is we can pick up, we can extrapolate and link it. Look, this is very important.
I know it is.
Please let me finish my point. And we can extrapolate. So apart from the industrialization, we also need to have mechanization of agriculture.
Time is my biggest problem.
This is important.
I know it is.
This is important.
I know it is.
This is not a party political broadcast.
I know.
This is something for our intellectuals and our populace, because we want them not to accept second best.
I'm going to
put pressure on their leaders.
Exactly. I'm going to.
Do you get my point?
Yeah, I see your point.
So those two areas, and if we do not have people who have said this is, you know, like how Deng Xiaoping did it, like how Lee Kuan Yew did it. If they're not saying this is how we're going to raise the mass of people out of poverty,
the chairman is here, the chairman is here, and he has taken everything on board of what you're saying.
He's had to say.
I know, but what I'm saying,
this is what needs to be done.
The development structure.
This is what needs to be done.
I know.
We need an indigenized structure. I could come up with a highfalutin example of what we might say is a redeveloped form of federalism. But I'm still saying it's not going to work if we don't attend to the two things I've just mentioned. And secondly, what are we doing? Or thirdly, rather, what are we doing to reformulate the mentality of the people? Because as a man thinketh, so is he. Now, that's not just a biblical expression.
Listen.
That's a truism of humanity. And if we don't get past that barrier, then all sorts of discussions are leading us nowhere.
I know.
This is the only way we're going to achieve something.
I know. The chairman has taken everything on board, and I'll introduce you to thoroughly so that these messages can go and reach Peter Obi if he's to be the next president of Nigeria.
I just want to make some few remarks in respect of the questions that you ask.
There is something here which I know you're probably going to argue over this, but President Buhari has said that he counts his achievements. Other people may know he hasn't, as succeeding against terrorism, although it's still there, securing a return to previous looted public funds, although nobody knows, and then increasing minimum wage, education reforms, which he has said he is was very successful, inclusion of more women in government. These are issues that he has raised, and he says, look, much as Peter Obi says he did most of the stuff in Anambra State, he has succeeded in doing this on a Nigerian level. Is it right? Because these are some of the things which were asked to him.
There is no basis for comparison of what Buhari has done and what Peter Obi did in Anambra State. There's no basis because the facts are very clear on the table. I mean, if you have provided employment, who were those people that were employed?
Exactly.
If you said you have fought insecurity, there's still insecurity everywhere. It's even worse now in the country where you can't even travel by road. You are aware of where, like 6 weeks ago, a prison in Abuja, Kuje prison, was broken into. And prisoners were freed from prison. Even in Abuja that we used to think used to be a safe haven. Insecurity is ravaging it. People are kidnapped and killed on daily basis. And somebody comes to tell you that he has done something about insecurity. The facts are there. You see it.
Nigerian Defense Academy.
If somebody, Nigerian Defense Academy was attacked and commissioned officers were killed. And you are saying you have achieved a lot in the area of insecurity. And you say you have improved education. I'm raising issues that you've done something about. And yet, the tertiary institution is shut down for 6 months. And there's no solution to it. And there's no visible efforts being made to bring back students to school. And you say you have achieved in those areas. You see, the facts are clear. And irrespective of what people come to say and put on the paper, the reality on the ground is there for people to see and to verify.
How do you see Nigeria in the next maybe 10 years time from now? We are coming to say in the next 10 years or so, both of you. How do you see Nigeria? Because we're coming towards the end of the program, and we could have covered quite a lot.
We want to talk about solutions, which I've already hinted at. The prospects are pretty dire unless there's a fundamental change. There's a fundamental change, not just in the attitudes of the people and the people they select to rule them, because they must now demand certain things. And there's certain things they can do, like civil disobedience and strikes, and they need to go above tribal loyalties because it's doing nothing. I know. It's doing nothing. So Nigeria, and there's another very fundamental thing. There's a Tanzanian scholar by the name of I've forgotten his name, but he's the head of he's a junior senior year chair of the university there. And what he basically said is Africa needs to rebuild its intellectual community. We know about secondary schools, primary, secondary schools, which have been deprived of being taught history. Imagine that fundamental nonsense going on, regardless of whoever was in power until recently. You need the redevelopment of an intellectual community. In other words,
putting more money in education. That is the case.
Without even going into that. But it's not just that. This is a very serious point.
I know.
You need to, your universities not only need to be well funded, but they need to be funded in a way that is not going according to the neoliberal model. This is what this gentleman was saying. Which I do fully agree with. He posited it in a kind of thing from the point of view of Pan-Africanism. Because at one time there was a united university system between Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya.
The East African. It was there. It was there
until 1970. Then it was abolished.
When Idi Amin came.
But the point is that neoliberalism means that you're just following the market. If you can invest in education, but also in the right way, and eschew neoliberal ways, then you have a situation. Because these intellectuals who will be reinvigorated, they're going to actually provide your leaders.
The man is a teacher. If you give him a platform as well, he will.
You've got a politician, you've got a teacher.
That's where the problem. That's where from my own perspective. You just wanted to comment on something, and then you, of course, I jumped in with this question. But what was that you wanted to comment on? You wanted to say something, and then I jumped in at some point. Could you go to that? Oh, it's gone out of your head.
Yes, okay. But what I want to say now is that I see Nigeria becoming great again. If Nigerians vote for Labour Party by next year, I think that there will be a change in the narratives in Nigeria. Based on our party program, based on Peter Obi's program. Our cardinal program is how to moving the country from being a consumption country to a productive country. That is one of our cardinal program, and others will follow. But we will have ample time to discuss all of this and the program that the Labour Party has in order to change the economic narrative, the political narratives, the attitude of the people, our own attitude, because change must begin from us, which he alluded to. Our own mindset, our own mentality, we need to change them. And therefore, we need reorientation of the people. All this put together, I foresee a situation, if we win next year, Nigeria may become great again.
Funding is a major issue. Now that funding of the Labour Party,
the people are funding it. The people are funding it. The people are funding the campaigns. You saw the million march that was held in Lagos. You saw the one that was held in Benin, Calabar, named them. They were funded by the people. So I believe that the funding of political campaigns of the party, people will generate the money and campaign. People are donating offices. People are sponsoring activities of the party. It is the first time in the history of Nigeria that you see people on their own.
Isn't that in expectation? If somebody gives you something and he offers it for free, then there is there's that expectation that
the expectation
when we get into power, I might get this position or I might do this.
It's not about position now. Those people even making those contributions are not known to us. The people themselves are coordinating and doing it. So, but I think that there's a reward because there's no system that you cannot have a reward. And that reward, from my perception of what the people want, is for us to give them good governance, unite the country, change the economic narratives, lift people from poverty, lift people away from unemployment. Let us, even if we can't do anything, we have the vast land and the human resources to produce food and let people eat. Nigerians are hungry. One of our major source of import is food importation. Nigeria, as big as we are, with the huge population and the arable land, we still import
food, of course.
And therefore, if we're able to provide food for people to eat, because I believe that the person that is hungry will not be rational enough to be able to think properly as to do the right thing at the right time. So if we're able to provide food for the people, food security, and then have for export, and begin to develop the country in terms of its industry and power and so on, I believe that the country will be on the path of recovery.
The biggest problem that it could occur here in Nigeria, the biggest problem that can occur, if Peter Obi, for example, becomes president of Nigeria, he hasn't been part of the caliber, those guys they're called calibers.
Who are eating the money
and stealing and all that. Those people have got the money. They're holding the country at ransom. And he's not part of it. If he's not part of it, then the chances are there could even be an assassination, there could be anything. Well, is there anything in plan? Because if inquiries, for example, start questioning this and that, and then they see that, like what happened when the Minister of by then she was Minister of Finance, when they kidnapped her mother.
Yes. Yeah. Who told the story in the video.
Yeah. You get the point.
In respect of fuel subsidy. And
any of these things could happen, and you may find that unless something comes in quickly and said, okay, how do we get these cabals? They're called cabals. How do we get these cabals? How do we get them out? Do we arrest them? Do we just let them take their loot and then begin a new Nigeria? Because without those kind of things again in place, I don't know whether Peter Obi has any plans in place to deal with that, because if he doesn't, then however much of a leader is going to be, these two parties, APC and PDP.
You've raised an issue there.
Yeah, because there would always be that.
Is central to development. When these people came to power, Lee Kuan Yew, Park Chung-hee, what they did is they took care of the bad guys.
No, those revolutions are not very good for Africa, because they just assassinated all of them. They killed all these people.
Well, we could say democracy.
You can't do that in Nigeria. You're not going to kill all these kebabs.
No. Do you hear that Lee Kuan Yew was a murderer, that he had concentration camps in which he murdered people?
No, he didn't do that.
Look, so don't jump to conclusions. Don't jump to conclusions.
No, but
I'm just saying that, by same token, you can say that democracy is non-successful, which it hasn't been. Openness. Because essentially, if you have an open society, by which it means therefore that external forces can manipulate you, and they use these bad guys to do bad for that country. That is the point I'm making. And that people have got to think carefully about, okay, how do we make a clean break from the start? You've got to think outside the box.
Okay.
And of course, I am one who is for individualism and freedom of the individual. But you have to then think, if Africa is so low down, how is it at the moment, economically, socially, and it's marginalized? It's a mere appendage to the world global economic system, despite its enormous economic resources. How is it going to raise itself? And so the example of China and these other examples in South Korea, Singapore, the Soviet Union, point a way that says it's not just going to be about being Mr. Nice Guy and being Mr. Transparent. But it's not saying that we must invite another Museveni. I hope I don't get you into trouble for saying that. Or another Abacha. These people had no vision. They were crooks. They were dictators. They were there for power's sake. But I'm saying that you can manipulate power in a sense that protects your society, builds up strong institutions, and gets rid of the bad guys.
The beginning of strong institution, this is where everything is. The beginning of strong institution. Maybe we could take a leap from what the former governor of Anambra did, that is Peter Obi. How did he manage to fight corruption in Anambra? It's easier to be fought on a state level than on a national level. Can he because
you see the truth of the matter, like Peter Obi has said, if the head is upright, is clean, he will be a role model and you find people who are beneath, shaping themselves and struggling to be like the leader.
Yeah.
The greatest misfortune we have had over the years is that we have had leaders who have no character, leaders who are corrupt, leaders who believe that they should steal money for themselves and for their children, yet unborn. And that has become the most unfortunate thing that has befall us over the years. Now you ask a question, how did Peter Obi was able to handle it in Anambra State? Of course, your character as a leader, your behavior as a leader, and being a role model will shape your followers. If the leader is not stealing, the people around you will, of course, not also steal.
You see, the
building strong institutions. Strong institutions are built by individuals. The individuals who are upright, who have character, who have competence, builds the institution to the level that the institutions will now be strong enough to be able to run on its own. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we've not had such strong individuals to build our institutions to the extent that those institutions will be able to stand on their own. And we believe that if Labour Party is given the opportunity, come next year, by the time we are leaving office after 8 years, we would have been able to build our institution to the extent that it will be able to stand on its own and put the country on the right path of development and growth.
I spoke to Nur Ribadu. He was fighting corruption years back. A very interesting character. I met him at London University, one of the universities in London, actually in East London. And one of the things that he talked about was the fact that I think if he had his way, none of the people, whether the senators or governors, everybody needs to go out. Everybody needs to be out. Nigeria needs to come after. I mean, if he had his way, he said, look, but if it means getting rid of, killing everybody or something like that, there's no way you're going to get the entire structure, because everything is rooted, is rotten right from the bottom to the middle to the top. So he was saying, look, he tried his level best, and several threats he was getting every now and then of being assassinated. He could discover things that no one else have ever discovered.
So in other words, he's saying something similar to what I was telling you.
Yeah, he's saying something similar, but the thing is that the approach in which I even suggested one time, getting foreigners to come in, maybe they might help, because if you get foreigners to come in, maybe things may work out differently.
I would say that's a non-starter. That's a non-starter.
Come on.
I mean, we've had that in the past, even actually in the north of Nigeria, which needed to get up to speed compared to the south at the beginning of independence. And so in this regard of this thing they call federal character, you had a situation where in northern Nigeria, they would not employ a southerner to a job. They would rather employ a foreigner. I don't think that works.
No. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that if you look at it, getting a Ugandan, getting a Kenyan, getting an Australian to come in and work in Nigeria, somewhere in Nigeria, could be a game changer. Then the Nigerians would probably move in, because there are certain sectors whereby Nigerians are called in, and they don't, and if they know, because I was speaking to a gas company director, and he said they sent a Nigerian-born engineer to Nigeria to go and work. He was one of the best they had. And they were telling them, no, we don't want him. I said, why don't you want him? Because he comes from maybe a certain part of Nigeria that they were overlooking.
Well, that's something that's what I'm saying. To sort out among themselves. You're heading down a dark.
You haven't sorted this thing out for 62 years. How are you going to sort it out now?
That's what I'm saying. You might as well say that for the rest of Africa. Yes, but we've got to use our own resources to sort that sort of thing out.
The truth of the matter is that we've got very, very qualified, intelligent Nigerians that can fix the country. The problem we have had, which I had earlier alluded to, is that the political parties that have been in place in Nigeria have not given equal opportunity to people. Political parties were hijacked by money bags and detect and send their cronies to hold offices in political parties and in government. And that's why it will appear as if you've not got competent people to run the affairs of the country. And that's why we believe that the starting point is for the people to own the process. Let political parties have internal party democracy. Let us have free and fair primaries. A system that any person, provided you have the competence, can aspire to any political office and be elected or be appointed on the basis of your competence and merit. And the problems you are looking at will all disappear.
So a non-starter. We have to just rely on ourselves and reform ourselves and reinvent ourselves. There's just it really is a nonsense.
We have to fix the country ourselves.
All right. I just want to thank both of you for coming on the show, and I do hope that we'll be together again at some point. I like this debate. It was very good, very educative, and I just want to thank everybody who's been viewing us, and I do hope we'll be together again next week for another edition of Africa Speaks. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all.